When using chocolate, it comes in a for us it comes in a raw form of chocolate coins, which we have to then melt. Because we can't use them just plain melted at that point. We have to actually do something called pre-crystallization to them, which involves melting to a higher temperature to get all the chocolate melted without any chunks. And that's what the machine's doing has done for me. It melts it, turns it for me, and then from there we bring it down to a lower temperature, which encourages both crystals to come into temperature at the same time. Um, One of them will crystallize before the other, which if it does it at the wrong time, what happens is you get streaks in your chocolate or spots and it doesn't set properly. Um, a lot of times when you see chocolate that has a lot of speckles or streaks, it's either been tempered properly and then melted in properly, or not tempered properly, which is the process in which we make the chocolate usable for us. So it has the right flow, it has the right temperature. It also creates the nice shiny shell that you see on the outside of the chocolate. It also creates the texture, because when the two crystals are not coming together at the right rates at the right times, what happens is you get grainy chocolate and it doesn't melt in your mouth. One crystal will melt before the other, so it melts a little weird, and you just get that sandy texture to your chocolates. So that's why it's very important. It takes time. I mean, it takes a long time for it to melt. You can't just throw it on an oven top and melt it. You know, you have to do it slow enough so that the chocolate doesn't actually burn. So we're going to test the chocolate now. And the way we do that, I mean, certainly the machine does most of the work for us, but we always have to verify, because what happens is you get too fast at what you're doing, and the chocolate is not ready yet, and you don't know that until you're halfway through your project. So you always test it. We take a spoon or something metal and dip it into it and allow it to sit for about a minute and see what happens. Usually it should completely harden on the outside. There should be no streaking or spotting on it at all, and it should happen in about a minute. If it takes longer than that, then it's not ready yet. Here you see it's starting to set, but there's still some streaking. You see the streaking around there. I hope you can see it with the light. So that means that the chocolate, right now what's happening is the one crystal is starting to set. It's where the hardened streaks are. And the other crystal, which is not setting, is not. So it's not quite ready yet. I mean, it will eventually harden if I were to put this in the refrigerator. What would happen then is it would set completely, and you'd end up with white streaks in it, which is, and you won't end up with a shine. The shine comes from the two fats coming together and being aligned just right. So this is not quite ready, but it's pretty close. So first thing, once this gets into temper, I'm going to, this is our caramel. We use these silicone mats here. They're just plain silicone mats. We fill it with I make my own caramel here. We make it from scratch. We use the 4 basic ingredients of caramel: sugar, cream, butter, and natural vanilla, which we make our own vanilla extract. Once the caramel is made, we put it into these here, and I get these shapes. And then from there, what has to happen is I have to put a bottom on here. So once the chocolate's in temper, I'll actually rub a bottom on there and allow the bottom to harden, so that way the fork, because what happens when you do this, the caramel will stick to the fork, and then when I dip it, it doesn't come off. So that's the first step we'll do. And then once we do that, we'll dip it in the chocolate itself in the kettle, and then sprinkle it with sea salt. We use a coarse-grained French sea salt, which has got a very high mineral content. And the purpose of that is that we don't want it to be just salty. Sea salt caramel actually has a high mineral content, which allows it to cut the salt a little bit and have a slightly mineral effect, and allows the caramel to not be as sweet. It brings out the flavor of the chocolate, and it actually combines perfectly well. And once that's done, it's really a great texture also, because the crunchiness you get from the sea salt, it dissolves in the mouth at the same time that the caramel and the chocolate does, and it creates a different effect. Rather than just being caramel that has salt added to it, it's actually caramel with a crunch, and the saltiness kind of comes along. It allows the palate to enjoy everything separately and at the same time. All right, now that the chocolate is set on the bottom, and we just take it out of the silicone mold just by popping it out. So the nice thing about the silicone is it's really flexible. What we'll do is we'll take it, we'll put it down like this, flip it upside down, and pick it up again. And what that does is it coats the entire chocolate, or the entire caramel, with chocolate. That way there's no leaking, no caramel seeping out of the side of it. And then to get the excess off, what we do is use surface tension. So we do this, which gently just touches the surface, and the surface tension of the chocolate in the pot pulls the chocolate off of the caramel. You see there's very little on there. Just give it a little scrape, slide it off like so, and that's that. Just a little sea salt on the top, just enough for the texture, because you don't want a lot of this salt. It's, there's, when it's a big crystal like that, you actually don't need a lot. You have to do this relatively quick because our caramel's at the right texture where, as it sits, it'll start to sag, so it won't have quite that dome shape that it has right now. It'll start to get kind of a blob shape. For us here, a lot of the chocolates we have, we like to have them in a nice shape and design, rather than being a glob of something on a plate. So it just looks a little more aesthetically pleasing and more attractive to the customer. Because, the thing is about candy, no matter what, people still like candy and chocolate, regardless of the size, the shape of it. But what helps one chocolate maker to stand out from another is their designs and their shapes that they use. It's much more attractive to people because, they say, oh, I want to eat that pretty thing or something like that. Or it looks good in a box when it gets put out at weddings or, other events a lot of times, or Christmas gifts, things like that, because anybody can just get a bar of chocolate, melt it down, and throw some nuts in it or caramel and call it a day. But the true art of this is to get it to look nice.